I am truly disappointed with this show. Not only did it cancel Clone Wars just as we were about to get all these wonderful stories, including what would have happened to Ahsoka, but it's replaced with this terrible, sad excuse for a show that pales in comparison to other animated shows, like the Clone Wars and Gravity Falls. So it should come as no surprise that the opener to Season 2 was nothing but loud noise, action, and captured the feel of Star Wars. It was amazing! Okay, it was not amazing by show standards, but it was not amazing by television standards, but by the standards Rebels has set for itself, it was pretty good. This was the Siege of Lothal. This is the hour-long series premiere to Season 2 of Rebels, and what a way to kick it off. I mean, basically, this is the Empire striking back against the Rebels. They realized after the Season 1 finale, like, oh shit, these Rebels are actually dangerous. So Vader comes in, he's like, alright, we're going to bring him in and squash him. So basically, Vader comes up with a plan to has Minister What's-Her-Face come back to trick the Rebels into coming back to Lothal in what can only be described as like one of the most cliche, like, you can trust me things ever. The Rebels go back, the Empire traps them on Lothal, so then they have to escape, and yeah, that's the episode. And while it doesn't sound like much, it was really well done, and probably the best episode so far of the show, and I think a lot of that has to do with a couple things. One, just better direction. I mean, better writers coming on, better directors. And also, they had a bit more time to work on this. Like, I don't know how long they worked on Season 1, so don't hold me to this, but they wrote, from the writing process, they had a fair amount of time to write this. Like, they started writing it in May and wrote it for July, which meant they basically, they put time and thought into this. They wrote, they rewrote, so it feels like they were, they had more than just a meeting, one story meeting to get it done. Because all the stories in Season 1 just felt very thrown together. And it's also impressive just because then they had less than a year to get the animation together. If you know anything about Clone Wars animation, you know that they don't have that much time. So yeah, it was impressive. I mean, the only really thing that kind of bothered me throughout the episode was some of the dialogue was cheesy and clunky. Like, again, like when they're debating whether or not to go back to Lothal, and they're talking about whether they can trust What's-Her-Face, and I'm sorry if I'm calling What's-Her-Face, but I really don't care about her character, but just that dialogue was cheesy. And there were just a couple lines that were very cheesy and remind you it's a kid's show, which, again, is a major problem with Rebels, is that the dialogue can be a little cringeworthy. And when you look at shows like Gravity Falls, where the dialogue is not cringeworthy, it's amazing. You kind of have to bummer. And yeah, in case you're wondering, it's a good episode, but yeah, it's like, it doesn't hold a candle to Gravity Falls with It's Not What It Seems. And I'm comparing it to that because they're both Disney XD shows. Alright, so me. Better not kill my voice during this. I loved how this was a non-stop action episode, because, it's the opener, and you gotta go big, you gotta go exciting, which is both a strength and weakness. I mean, for a couple reasons. One, it makes it exciting, but on the other end, you also run the risk of losing character in that. And it wasn't just a bunch of them running around, there was actual character development. Like, it actually took time to let the characters breathe. Like, we get to know Kanan, and there's a part where he says something about not wanting to get involved with the rebellion, wanting to do his own thing. And that's interesting, because it was the first time I felt like I actually got to know something about Kanan. He wasn't just the Jedi. And I really hope they explore that line, and because it could flesh them out. Because one problem Rebels has is I don't really care about the characters. I don't feel like I get to know much about them outside their name and their species. Like, if you watch the Plinkett's Phantom Menace review, he basically does this whole thing where you have to describe the character without saying who they are and what they do. And most of these characters fail that test. poorly, because, like, the villain, why does the villain do this? Because they're evil. Why does the good guy do this? Because they're the good guy. And I like how there's a bit more going on, and I really hope they flesh that out. I mean, they said they're going to explore the characters more this season. I really hope they do, because, yeah, honestly, I care more about Vader and Ahsoka than I do everyone else on this show. I mean, like, seriously, when those two are on screen, I'll get more into this when we get towards the end, but towards the end, I was way more invested in what was happening with Vader and Ahsoka than them, probably because, those are characters I've grown to care about, whereas Rebels, they haven't really given me a reason to care yet, although they could. I mean, I've seen shows where they've taken characters I didn't care about and turned them around. I mean, look at Gravity Falls. I mean, I didn't care about Pacifica on that show until, like, halfway through season 2, and then they delivered the episode. I'm like, wow, Pacifica's actually a cool character. Who knew? So, yeah. And also, Zeb got developed. Zeb briefly referenced something that he did before the rebellion, and I hope that comes back or gets explored. So, yeah, this was definitely the Empire Strikes Back stake stories. I love how, not only how we seem to be getting off Lothal, because, I get it, you want to start small, but Lothal, not an interesting planet. We spent so much time there in Season 1, so it's nice to finally, that we're going to actually get off. We're leaving Lothal, and we're going up for places. Because, it was like Republic City and Corrin that we're stuck there, and we want to go out and see the world, but we're stuck there. But, I mean, although I felt like with Republic City, at least, it was an interesting world. There were interesting stories and characters, but Lothal, it was just a nothing planet. So, I'm hoping, and I wonder if that was just to save animation, just keep it confined, along with just keeping the rebellion small scale. But, again, we're off it, so thankfully, hopefully we're going to get to more diverse locations. It's a big galaxy, so I'm really hoping that they'll take advantage of that and just really take us to a variety of diverse worlds, which, if they follow in the tradition of Clone Wars past, they might, odds are they might just, just take locations they didn't use from the Clone Wars and put them in there, but hopefully not. Hopefully they'll think outside the box and do more original stuff. But I like how when we leave Lothal, we don't just leave Lothal. It's like, no, they have to leave Lothal because, again, as I mentioned before, not only does the Empire throw everything at them, but they completely wreck Lothal. Like, it completely, like, Ezra's house gets blown up, What's-Her-Face dies. I'm glad they killed her off. I mean, one, it makes it feel like something happened, but also, I really didn't care for her as a character, so it's nice to see her get the axe. And it also shows that Rebels, while it's a kid's show, it's not afraid to kill people off, and that people can die, and there are a couple characters on this show who they probably aren't all going to make it, especially the Jedi, who for some reason aren't in Rebels. So I'm wondering, like, I feel like Ahsoka's definitely dead. She's way too big and important a character to see go, although that might be sad. But I'll get to that in a bit. Tarkin Town gets destroyed, and our Rebels have to make a tough call to leave Lothal and not help the people of Tarkin Town. It's a risk, and that was a really tough call, and I like the fact that there are stakes and there are consequences. So now let's get to the best part of this episode, Vader. He is on the show. I was a little skeptical about them bringing him in this early. Not because I don't like Vader, but because, number one, Vader's such an awesome character. I felt like, one, it's just going to take away from everyone, the characters on the show, and to some extent it does, because again, I do really care about Vader, and I think he's a more interesting character than everyone else, but also he's just such a tank. It's like, where are you gonna go from here? Like, once you bring in Vader, this is season 2, it's like, for seasons 3 or 4, like, what can you do to raise the stakes besides putting Vader in? And it's also just gonna make every episode after this just feel really underwhelming, because it's like, we're fighting some guy, not Vader. And for the time being, and we'll have to wait and see if they can keep it up or if everything's just going to feel underwhelming after Vader, which probably. But for this, it was really good. It's the Vader we know and gone. There's a very amusing bit. They have these behind-the-scenes videos and called Rebels Recon or Not. They said this is far removed, far gone from the Vader we know from the prequels, and they're showing all this footage of, the Anakin that we all, most people, there's some people who probably will defend him, but most people agree is not the best version of Anakin. Like, we're seeing all these versions of the prequels, and I kind of chuckled at that, although again, if you like the Vader of the prequels, I'm not going to hold that entirely against you, because, number one, I do like to be subjective to opinion. Also, there was a time when I did enjoy the prequels, so if you like him, no biggie. But yeah, I mean, it was just chuckling to see whiny Anakin just be like, Vader's far removed from that. In other words, this is nothing like prequel Anakin. Thank goodness. But he was awesome. He had this really presence, this weight, this presence to him. And you felt like the Rebels were screwed when Vader showed up. Like, he's a tank. He puts up a good fight, and I was a little surprised at first that they got away, but then once you realize Vader let them, it's like, oh, okay. Like, he was just putting up a show. Like, if he wanted, he could have killed them. And he did hurt him. He did mess up Sabine's armor, which, hey, Sabine's armor actually deflected something. And he did wound Kaden. I wish they had gone a bit more scrapped up, because it's Vader, and it kind of undermines him if you get away, but he still felt threatening, and I really hope that Vader, when he shows up, he wrecks stuff, and, because if they do this too many times, it's going to undermine Vader. Although I do like this cat and mouse of how when Vader shows up, you run. It's like they're outmatched. It's not like on Clone Wars where when Dooku shows or Ventress shows up, it's like you try to capture him. No, when Vader shows up, you run. And James Earl Jones, I love the fact that they got him back. I kind of forgot how awesome James Earl Jones is as voicing Vader, because, we've had actors voice Vader, like the guy who voices Chad Vader voiced him for a while, and he was good, but there's this weight and presence James Earl Jones has, and I forgot how much I missed it until I had it back. So, I mean, probably because Disney XD has money that they can afford to pull this off, but I'm just glad Vader's back. I mean, my only concern about him is the animation. I mean, this could very well just be the Ralph McQuarrie design, but he just looks off, and it might just be the Ralph McQuarrie design, or it could just be the animation isn't quite there. It's because capes are hard to animate, but he looks a little skinny, and I pictured him a little bigger and heavier. Like, he felt a little lighter, moved a little quicker than I thought. Like, Vader, I don't know, I feel like when Vader swings, it should be this slow, powerful movement. Like in Empire, like when Vader just casually moves his lightsaber. But again, that's just nitpicking. Vader still looked awesome, he felt awesome when he was flying around and shooting people. Like, you felt like, yeah, Vader's an above-average pilot. And when the whole bit where Vader's chasing him around, especially in that space battle at the end, it felt like classic Star Wars, and I feel like it's weird to say it, but it felt like classic Star Wars, and especially the ending. When he calls the Emperor, and Vader, like, destroys the fleet, and there were casualties, and even with Hera Vader was still hard again. It was only, like, luck and maybe a bit of Vader underestimating them to escape. And then Vader calls the Emperor, which does a really nice job of setting up the season of how, Vader learning Ahsoka's alive and that she is a threat. And then he's also looking for Kenobi. And that there's also going to be an Inquisitor dealing with the Rebels. Yeah, because calling an Inquisitor, because that worked out. First off, it felt a little weird to me to just see Vader call the Emperor on a random hologram, as opposed to Empire Strikes Back, where he's a special chamber. I mean, it could very well just be like a save money thing. Like, that's a lot easier, just have Vader just stand him right there. But I guess it just felt random, because the transition from him standing to kneeling just didn't feel smooth. It, felt a little quick. Which, again, that might just be the animation. It might just be tricky animation, because they did have less than a year, so maybe I wonder if that was a little hiccup, and if they had a bit more time, maybe they could have made that a little smoother, but look, still good. So you have First off, Sam Witwer, really good job as the Emperor. I would have. First off, it's a shame Ian Abercrombie wasn't around because he nailed Palpatine and the Emperor. But since we don't have him, we have Sam Witwer. I would have been okay with Tim Curry voicing him just because Tim Curry did a nice job as Palpatine, or even Mike Stacasa because his Emperor impersonation is dead on. But Sam Witwer also does a really good job, and I do hear a bit of Tim Curry in there. I liked how they kept the Emperor's appearance a mystery. It's probably more the Jaws reason than anything, where it's they can't get him working. Like, the Emperor's really hard to do, especially considering he's all robes. And on Clone Wars, I remember they held back on him to Season 5, which I feel like that was probably just due to the fact that he's really hard to animate, and they wanted to wait until they could get him to look right. But, kind of like Jaws were hiding him because of not having him work properly. It adds to the character because it adds to the mystery, it adds to the suspense, and I like that. I really hope they keep it up. And I wouldn't mind just not seeing the Emperor at all. But if you're going to show the Emperor, wait until you know you're ready. Like when you have the animation down and when you can get him to look good. I do not want the Emperor to show up and look silly. Not silly, but you know what I mean. Like, look like the animation's quite not there. It'll just be interesting to see how they do more for the Ralph McQuarrie version. But yeah, like, they're bringing out the big guns early with Vader and the Emperor, because the Clone Wars held off on the Emperor until Season 5, so if they're bringing these characters in this early, I'm kind of hoping they know what they're doing and they aren't going to run the risk of writing themselves into a corner. It's like Man of Steel when they had Superman fight Zod who had the same powers as him. It's like, this is really big, but it's like, where do you go from here? So yeah, Vader's hiring a new Inquisitor because that worked out so well the last time. I'm hoping the new Inquisitor, whoever he or she is, that she's given a bit more he or she is given a bit more personality and a lot more fleshed out than the Inquisitor. But above all, this character should be like, this Inquisitor should be the Azula to this show's Zhao. And I'm not just saying that because both of these villains are voiced by Jason Isaacs, in the sense that you have a villain in Season 1 voiced by Jason Isaac who is killed in the season finale, and then they are replaced by another villain who is way cooler, interesting, and more memorable. And I really hope this new villain is that. Because Azula just completely blew Zhao out of the water, and I hope that this new Inquisitor is a way more interesting villain. Because again, for as much as I like seeing all the classic characters, I want to see new and interesting characters. Because you've already established Ahsoka as an interesting character. I want more interesting characters, and I really hope the Inquisitor isn't just a generic villain that he or she is given a personality fleshed out, like Ventress, or like Ventress. She was kind of an Inquisitor character. It was interesting. There's rumors that it's going to be Mara Jade, just renamed something and the last name be Zond as a reference to her, which would be cool. Although and there's also Barriss, but given how she was kind of against the Republic, saying it was becoming an empire, it wouldn't make sense for her. We'll just have to wait and see, though. So yeah, my only real concern is they put out the big guns early and that they're just that everything after this is going to feel underwhelming. It's like Clone Wars when they have those amazing arcs, like the Darth Maul arc or Yoda arc, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for the next thing, and then it's like, it's good, but it's not. But I want this. So yeah, fun, really good episode for the show standards, which, considering how much I dislike Season 1, it's nice to have an episode that I could have fun with. This isn't good television. I mean, shows like Gravity Falls just still blow this away. But it's still good. And now I'm just going to get into a couple things that I didn't have time to talk about. Well, not time to talk about, but like stuff that I couldn't find anywhere to work into the story. So I'm just going to bring up at the end. I like how they brought Lando back. I mean, I'm not too big on Lando, but in the sense that they actually made that episode mean something and that it wasn't just a stupid throwaway episode. And I guess to some extent it was also them fulfilling their we need to have X number of Star Wars characters appear in Rebels quota. I hope they don't have them being too involved with the Empire. Not the Empire, the Rebels, because I mean, it's believable that he'd work with the rebellion when it's profitable, but I don't know, if they do it too much, it would just seem a little weird. Like, it would kind of undermine him being far moved, because Lando's, like, he has no love of the Empire. He's about business, but business that doesn't involve the Empire getting involved in him. I mean, that was the whole point of his mining operation was, keep it small enough. So he doesn't want to get noticed by the Empire, and, I mean, part of me is just, because I've been reading the Thrawn trilogy, and they've kind of gone this, by helping out the rebels, you're kind of making yourself an enemy and target of the Empire, so I hope they don't do that too much, or otherwise it's just Lando's just going to become a threat to the Empire, and it's going to be like, yeah, I mean, for someone who really doesn't want to trouble with the Empire, you're really giving them a lot of reasons to give you trouble. Another thing I want to bring up was the fact that on the behind-the-scenes video, someone pointed this out, but Ezra was born on Empire Day, which means he was born a couple days before Luke. Which means that in A New Hope, Ezra's actually about the same age as Luke. Like, he's a couple days younger than him. So that means he's probably a teenager in A New Hope, assuming he survives, which is a question as to who's going to live and who's going to die, because Kanan, Ezra, and Ahsoka are all at risk. I mean, especially Ahsoka, because it really seems like Ahsoka's story is going to come to a head this season. I mean, they're clearly building up a confrontation between her and Vader. Hopefully before then they release, like, the rest of the Ahsoka arcs they had planned, although, again, it would just seem silly although it would seem weird to bring Ahsoka back and then kill her off, but we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, for once, I'm actually excited about Rebels. I mean, I hope this is a quality spike and this isn't just a temporary good episode. For the first time, I'm actually excited about Rebels coming back, and bummed I have to wait a few months for the next episode, but Gravity Falls is coming back, so hopefully that'll all be over. But yeah, I mean, just develop the characters more, keep the pacing moving, go to new interesting locations, for as much as I love Ahsoka and Vader, make sure the other characters are interesting, bring in new stuff, and yeah, just keep it, and also work on your corny dialogue. But other than that, really solid episode. And yeah, I cannot wait for Season 2 to come back. Hopefully it'll be good. Leave your thoughts in the comments below about what you thought of the Siege of Lothal. Like, dislike, subscribe. And this is JStar260, and may the Force be with this show. And also may the Force be with the Untold Clone Wars. And hopefully we'll get to see those stories. Because I'm really curious what happened to Ahsoka right after that. But regardless, good job, guys. You have my faith. My faith has been restored in you. Don't lose it. Rex is coming back, so that better be fun. So, again, this is JStar60. May the Force be with you. And may the Force be with the crew behind Rebels. Until next time, take care. Or should I say, may the Force be with you. Yeah, I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, so... Ba-da! Yeah, that's lame. Alright. Take care.